might add, just endorsed universal health care last week. I think that was a big deal. But the problem is that what the attack on health care reform has always been, what if you lose what you already have? Health care is like Congress. Everybody hates Congress, but they always re-elect their congresspeople because they like these people. Well, people don't like the healthcare system because it's expensive, but they like their doctors and they like their own healthcare if they have decent insurance, and 65% of Americans do. So what Obama did is be the first person who's really pushed this, who understood this. In order to have reform, you can't just do the reform for the 20% with no insurance. It has to be about everybody. And the argument is now, especially in these difficult economic times, you may have health insurance, but over the last 15 years, you have experienced the fear that you'll lose your job and therefore your health insurance. You have experienced neighbors who have had their health care taken away because they've become ill and the health insurance company knows they can make more money if they don't take care of you. People who've been denied health insurance because they had pre-existing conditions. And so what Obama has promised is not a single payer or a private health care system or something for everybody. What he's promised is you get to make the choice. That is a very powerful issue. When it becomes not over an argument, not over this system or that system, which half the people in the country can't understand anyway, if not more, when it becomes an argument about taking choices away from politicians and the health insurance business and bureaucrats and giving them to the American people, it becomes a very powerful argument. And that is what Obama's argument is. If you like what you have, you can keep it. We're not going to threaten people who work for Microsoft, where I was in one of the stops I made yesterday. They love their insurance. But we are, so if you like what you have, you can keep it. But if you don't like what you have, and you want a system where everybody can get in, whether they have a pre-existing condition or not, which can never be taken away, which is much more efficient than the private sector, which goes with you wherever you go, anywhere in America, automatically, and which you get whether you have a job or don't, i.e. Medicare, then you can sign up for that. And what is the core of his argument is we ought to have a public option, because the public option will do two things. First of all, it'll expose people under 65 to a system that makes sense. It's inexpensive to run, 4 cents on every dollar as opposed to 20, which is the best the private insurance industry can do. And many, it depends how much the return on equity is higher, they take more out. And it will give people the choice. And it will also require the insurance companies, if they want to survive. You know, the Republicans are there talking about the private insurance industry getting put out of business. We're not going to put the private insurance industry out of business. The government's not going to do that. The people who are going to put the private insurance industry out of business are you. Because if they can't catch up and treat their customers as well as Medicare does, then they're not going to be in business. Now, Medicare is not perfect. It is not. But right now, it is a much better system, and it is a much more cost-effective system than we have. So the core of reform is the public option. The core reform that must be in this bill. There are only 3 things that are absolutely essential to this bill. 2 of them are insurance reform, which you can do for nothing. We did it 15 years ago, guaranteed issued community rating. We required that no, you could not sell health insurance in my state, and you cannot today. If you were turned down, you couldn't be turned down for any reason other than non-payment of premiums, so that everybody's in who can afford it. And in order not to game the system by charging people $10,000 a month if you didn't want them in your SIN, you can't charge more than 20% above your lowest rate to anybody. That's community rating. So if they're not going to put in a public option and do health care reform, they can do insurance reform, but for God's sakes, don't spend $600 billion of our money feeding the present system, because it isn't going to work. At least you can do some insurance reform, that's fine. But if you want real reform, it's not the Congress that's going to reform health care. It is you. But the Congress has to change the law so you can have the kinds of choices that they have. Remember Obama used to say in the campaign, we're going to have the kind of system, you know, you get what the congressman gets? Well, the congressman gets socialized medicine. It makes me laugh. Lindsey Graham and all these head cases are you know, Jim DeMent and all these people. Oh, we mustn't have socialized medicine. I saw these 2 congressmen from western Iowa and West Texas talk about this. You'd think communists were hiding under every bed. Well, they got socialized medicine. These right-wing people who are pounding the pulpit and screaming and yelling about socialized medicine, what do you think they have? If they get sick, they go down to the Capitol, they don't get a bill, they don't have to wait in line, they get what they need, and they come back upstairs. Socialized medicine, how come we don't get that, huh? So, That's the core of the argument that I make in the book. There's a lot of good stuff in there, as I said before. What you can do. Now, you know, one of the things you can do, in addition to go to the websites that we name in the book, is go to Bill Press's website. I don't know how many of you ever listened to Bill Press's morning show that's carried in Portland. Well, Bill Press has a website at billpress.com. It names the 10 Democratic senators that have not yet signed on to the public option. And Oregon happens to have one, I think. And they all have. Here we go. I usually, what? Which one? I think
Ron Biden.
I don't think so. I've been told he hasn't signed on yet. Maybe he has signed on, and call him up and ask him, you know? Call him up and ask him. But look, this is important stuff. And we're not trying to antagonize people. They haven't come out against it. But we can't, this is not a reform bill without a public option. It just isn't. It is not a public reform. So, you know, he's your senator, call him. Your representatives, call them. Some of them are for it. Blumenauer's for it, but call them anyway. Tell them thanks. You know, people do like to be told thank you. They don't just like to be told and yelled at when they didn't do what you wanted all the time. So if you know that your congresspeople are supporting it, then thank them. You know, most people in places that I talk say, well, all our people are in favor of it, so what do I do? And I don't suggest people writing letters, although I think emails do work, to people who are not their representatives. But in Oregon, you can do something about this, and every one of you has a responsibility. I'm just going to close by saying this. I was talking to a group of college students earlier in the week, and they were upset about the special interests in the health insurance companies that gave tons of money to senators and congressmen, and that's why it wasn't. And I said, look, this isn't just their fault. This is our fault if we don't get this passed. An extraordinary change has just come over America as a result of all the things that you did. And it's a much more extraordinary change than most people think. It's really it's the electoral endpoint of a huge change in America. In 2004, young people's votes went up by 20% under 35, and they voted 56% for John Kerry. In 2006, young people increased their vote by 24% over the 2002 election, and 61% of them voted for the Democratic candidate for Congress on average around the country. In 2008, for the first time in my life, and the first time in the lifetime of anyone sitting in this room, more people voted in the presidential election who were under 35 years old than voted who were over 65 years old. This is a revolution. You have produced an extraordinary change. And this new generation is an extraordinary generation. It's the first multicultural generation in the history of America. America has been a multicultural place for a long time, but this is the first generation that sees themselves the way America really is. And they want something done, and they have proven that you can go to the ballot box and elect somebody that nobody thought could be elected. Now, you don't get to take time off politics. That's our generation made a lot of huge changes in America, and I'm proud of those changes. But the biggest mistake we made is after we exhausted ourselves and exhausted the country with all these incredible changes from the 50s, we then, into the 60s and 70s, we then said, okay, now we can take a break from politics. And the result, I think, was George Bush and Dick Cheney. You can't ever take a break from politics. I don't mean you all have to sleep on the floor for 20 weeks in a row like some people did who were 20 years old. You can't do that physically when you're 40. Certainly not if you're married with kids and a job. But you can be on the library board or on the planning commission. You can give money to people that you care about. You can talk to your friends. You can run for office yourself. There's a lot of things you can do, but you can't give up your ties to your communities ever. And if we exercise the same kind of extraordinary grassroots vigilance which elected Barack Obama President of the United States in getting a real health care plan passed that contains a public option, I'm pretty sure that we're going to beat even the most rich and well-organized lobbies against us. Thanks very much.